I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. You know, we have a really neat show today because, a lot of the stuff that we do has to do with Robinson Forest. And, they're celebrating 100 years. And so this was a really big thing for us.
Yeah, it's a really exciting show. I'm very glad to have all our presenters here today. We're going to have Dr. Jeff Stringer. He's put together a nice video about Robinson Forest. Unfortunately, Dr. Stringer couldn't be with us today, but we do have John Reinstedel, who is the manager of Robinson Forest. And we're also going to have Mr. Chad Nyman on talking about National Forest Products Week. So it's a really good show. And, speaking of Robinson Forest, Renee, that was where I got some of my training when I went to school here. And it has a fond place in my heart for sure. And they have been doing so much great work down there for a long time. And, now having John Reinstedel on there, he's really done so much in such a short period. He's had to deal with a lot. We've had some flooding and some other issues down there. We couldn't feel better about the position, I think, of Robinson Forest right now and the leadership we have down there working on that. So really excited to hear from these folks today. We appreciate y'all being with us today. If you do have any questions for our presenters, you can use the chat pod to interact with them. If you are on YouTube, you can hit us up via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we can respond to you that way. But Renee, just glad to be with you today and glad to kind of celebrate Robinson Forest and National Forest Products Week. It's a great Wednesday here in Lexington.
It really is. So let's go ahead and get started. So John, if you want to turn your camera on. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Robinson Forest, and then we will watch the video and we can get questions answered after the fact.
Certainly. So, Robinson Forest, of course, is a research, education, extension, and forest here that's owned by the University of Kentucky. I think Dr. Stringer is going to be going into more details about all of that. Basically, the forest is 7 different blocks. 10,000 acre main block is one of the last contiguous, non-disturbed areas in Eastern Kentucky, what we always refer to as the rugged interior section of the Cumberland Plateau. A lot of people think the Coalfield Mountains, well, they are mountains, but millions of years ago, it was a big flat plateau that has eroded over time, which actually helped form the hills and the hollers, if you will. So it's an area that we're doing a lot of research, hydrology. Dr. Stringer goes into a lot of that. And then also we have some upcoming areas like adaptive silviculture for climate change, which is going to be a really neat project. It is one of 10 nationally and will be the last ASCC site actually put in that is partners with the Northern Institute of Climate Science, NIACS, and Dr. Muller will be heading that up, and I will be his partner. So I'm basically introduce myself. I guess I didn't do it first, but I'm the assistant director and forest manager here at Robinson Forest. Been here going on 4 years.
All right. Well, Renee, if you're ready, I can go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Looking forward to the video from Dr. Stringer.
All righty, I'll get it going.
Well, I wish I could have been here live, and I apologize for that. Although I'm glad to be able to give you spend a little bit of time and give you a little bit of information on Robinson Forest. Robinson Forest is the University of Kentucky's research forest and demonstration forest located in Eastern Kentucky. And we're going to spend a little time now talking about the history of the forest and its value to forestry and to woodland owners throughout Kentucky. It's the 100th year anniversary. UK acquired it in 1923, and we're very proud of it. And I'm glad to be able to spend a few minutes talking to you about this valued resource. As I indicated before, we've owned it since 1923. The view you're seeing now is off the fire tower. I'll show you a picture of the fire tower in a little bit, looking out over Robinson Forest. This is the 10,000 acres of Robinson Forest. It's contiguous acreage. And this is a little picture inside of what it looks like. It's a highly dissected topography. It's all second growth, and we'll talk just a little bit about that in a few minutes. It is located, as I mentioned before, in Eastern Kentucky. It's in the middle of the Eastern Coalfield region of Kentucky. We'll have some other shots to kind of show you what's directly around the forest. Specifically, it's located at the intersection of Breathitt, Knott and Perry counties. It's visible. If you're in Google Maps or Google Earth, you can see it. A solid forest surrounded by some areas of surface mining. Let's talk a little bit about the history of it. And when I talk about history, let's go back beyond European settlement. Robinson Forest was used quite heavily by indigenous First Nations. Were around Robinson Forest. They occupied and spent time in these rock shelters. We have those all over Robinson Forest. And UK archaeology came in here and did a survey of all these rock shelters and found clear evidence of the use of these shelters by First Nation peoples. And so we have these located. We have one that has petroglyphs. You can see on that rock directly in the middle of the picture. You can see where some deer prints were carved into the rock. And this particular site has both hoof prints from deer and turkey prints as well. And of course, we keep that site protected, as we do all of these major rock shelters. Here you see we were running a research study in around this particular rock shelter, and we cordoned it off so we wouldn't do anything negative to that archaeological site. So we have a number of these throughout the forest. Now, other than that, the use, we can't find any use of the area by Native Americans, by the indigenous tribes, other than passing through, using these rock shelters and that kind of thing. So we'll kind of fast forward here into when we, when European settlement occurred, and we started to use the land quite heavily. It was settled. The area was settled a lot of times by people that didn't necessarily own the land. They were squatting on the land. They built cabins on them, and they lived subsistence level farming, if you will. You can see some areas that were cleared out in the photo above, and they were farmed. A number of the sites were farmed. Now, this photo that you see of this being farmed was not taken from Robinson Forest, but it was very similar to the practice that was used there to grow corn in a lot of the what we call cove sites, or the hollows, if you will, where the soil was pretty productive. And we actually have interviewed people as part of our research that were actually involved in farming Robinson Forest back in the day, so to speak. And there's a number of pictures here of the lumber boom and the timber boom that occurred in Eastern Kentucky in the early 1900s. And around Jackson, Kentucky, and Quicksand, Kentucky, there was a host of large timber companies that went in, bought the land, and extracted the timber. And they did that with the use of locomotives. And I'm going to show you several of these pictures, kind of blow them up and talk about them in detail. This picture here is of Quicksand, Kentucky. Quicksand, Kentucky looks a lot different now than it did then. Here you see on the far right-hand side, you see the steam coming up. That was a very, very large sawmill. Mobley and Robinson Lumber Company were stationed here. This was a company town. All the houses were put in there by the company. They had a company store and all that. And this is about 15 or 20 air miles from Robinson Forest. And Robinson Forest, the large timber from Robinson Forest was railroaded into this facility at Quicksand. And right now it's the home of the Robinson Center. And this is a UK Ag Experiment Station in Quicksand. Some of you may have visited there before. There's a few of these structures that are left. Most are gone now. The sawmill's gone, and our office building actually there is built on the slab pile for that mill. And one of the reasons I show this picture a lot is because look at the landscape. Look at the hillside that's directly in front of where the camera was set up, and look at the hillside in the back. And you could see where this was almost, all the hardwood timber, merchantable timber is cut. For as far as the eye can see. And of course, it's all grown up now. If you went back and took a picture where this was at right now, you couldn't see anything because it'd be in trees. But the timber harvesting and the lumber milling had a significant impact on the area. And these are just some pictures that were taken from some archives, local archives there, kind of showing what it looked like back at that time. And some of that cutting was very heavy, and some of it was very much of a selective cut. Now, this is a picture of a train load of logs. You can see them quite clearly there, and there's a boom car at the very end. You can see that black boom sticking up above the little tree branch right there. And this is actually timber and logs coming from Robinson Forest on a narrow gauge rail, locomotive powered, taking the logs back to Quicksand where the main mill was at. Okay. And this is a picture. I mentioned Mobley and Robinson. Mr. Robinson's on the left, and it was Mobley and Robinson Lumber Company that had purchased Robinson Forest and logged all the timber off of it. And when they were done, Mr. Robinson gave it to UK in trust for the demonstration of reforestation for the betterment of the people of the region. And over the next 10 years after that, he spent time acquiring the coal rights so that, using the broad form deed, they couldn't surface mine, if you will, Robinson Forest. So he spent a lot of time putting this together so that UK could have this. And of course, we've been demonstrating reforestation ever since. It's a great second growth forest. It all is second growth. They left very few trees, and very few areas weren't cut. So it is Robinson Forest now is all second growth. We acquired it in 23, and this is a picture of the first forester. UK hired a forester, Burridge, who one of the requirements to be a forester back then is you had to have your own ATV, which back then was a horse. And so he's going out to take plots, and he inventoried the forest. At that time, we have his inventory from that. And the most prevalent species we have was chestnut, because American chestnut didn't have a lot of commercial value at the time, and they left a lot of chestnut. And of course, over the next 10, 20, and 30 years, it all died out from the chestnut blight. But that's a picture of Burridge out there getting ready to take some sample plots on the forest. This was one of the initial UK installations. This is a zoologic lab building put in by Funkhauser. Funkhauser was a biologist at UK at that time and established a lab there for his zoological research. Right now, if we go back to that site, and I've done this, you can't find that site. I mean, it's overgrown with yellow poplar now, large yellow poplar trees, 18, 20 inches in diameter, and you can't find any of this building there at this time. There was a number of these trestle bridges put in at Robinson Forest, and at one time it was a thoroughfare. People come and driving cars and trucks through Robinson Forest. There was picnic areas set up and that kind of thing. So there was a lot of use of the forest for some recreational activity back then. The Civilian Conservation Corps, when they were in place and operational, they built this fire tower, which is still there to this day. It's been checked out by engineers, and we put all new aluminum stairs and thing. And so it's quite a nice facility. It was put in by the CCC, and it's still quite functional now. And you can go up, like the picture we saw at the beginning, where, you can look out over the forest. You can still do that now. We have groups that can go up, and we have observation platforms put in so you can look out over top of the forest. And one of the things that went on back then when UK first acquired it while the forest was regrowing is we did a lot of, there was a lot of work by specialists there to help them with farming techniques, improved genotype, if you will, of chickens and hogs and those kind of things. And that last picture I put up there is a group of young ladies that were taking a cooking class at Robinson Forest at that time. So a lot of those kind of things just to improve, improve farming and improving, just life in general in the region was done at this facility. So from 1923, when we acquired it, up through 1970, ag research and demonstration was done both at the forest and the Quicksand facility. There were foresters present. I showed you Burridge, but after he'd come and gone, there was always foresters present and crews protected the property. They quote unquote improved the forest by killing American beech. There was a lot of hollow beech that was left standing, wounded from fire and that kind of thing. And so our crews did some of that. And we had some early U.S. Forest Service research that was put in at the forest during this time. And 1970, we had the establishment of the UK Department of Forestry, which is now the University of Kentucky Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And in 1972, we started actually installing research at Robinson Forest. Hydrology, and we'll talk more about research here in a minute, but hydrology research, ecology, silviculture, wildlife, just to name a few. Right. Here's kind of a picture, if you will. So this is a satellite view of Robinson Forest, and the red is outlines the 10,000 acres of contiguous forest that's part of Robinson Forest. Actually has 15,000 acres total. 10,000 acres are in this one contiguous area, and we have several other smaller outlying tracts with the remainder of the 5,000 acre to make a total of 15. But when we speak of Robinson Forest, we're primarily talking about this main tract here. There's some sub watersheds there that are marked in yellow that we're going to talk about a little later as far as research that was done there. And this 10,000 acres contains two very large 4,000 plus acre watersheds, the largest undisturbed watersheds, if you will, outside of timber harvesting, that are in the Cumberland Plateau physiographic region, which spans from West Virginia down to northern Alabama. And we do a lot of work involving hydrology work involving those watersheds. Now I'll go back to this map just for a second. You can see the tan areas there. Those are surface mine. That's bare ground, if you will, generated from surface mining. And while surface mining does not surround the forest in total, there's a lot of it, a lot of surface mining activity, or was a lot of surface mining activity around Robinson Forest. You can clearly see it here. And back in the 80s, when coal mining was really hopping in the Eastern Coalfield region, they remined this area, and you can see where they remined right up to the boundary of Robinson Forest. So that forested area on top of the hill there is Robinson Forest. You can literally walk off the boundary when this was going on. When they were finished this, of course, they backfilled it and put a gentle grade all the way up the forest. But in a lot of ways, it is an island, so to speak, with surface mining around it. And this is just a good picture. It gives you some idea what that looked like back then. And of course, we use Robinson Forest for the three mission areas that UK and our department has: teaching, formal instruction, extension for continuing education, and research. And this is just a picture of forestry students being trained at the forest. We have a sawmill there, and here they're being trained on, looking at soil pits and using equipment and sawing lumber and those kind of things. We also, as I mentioned, use it for continuing education, a lot of extension work there. We have kiosks out in the woods, for example, and we're able to do live equipment demonstrations. This kiosk out there, this is where NRCS field personnel being trained in water quality issues there. And we're here training some loggers on how to cross streams. We use it as a training place, and have in the past for our master logger program. So there's a lot of different kinds of continuing education. I could spend an hour talking about all the different kinds of continuing education that's done there, including that for woodland owners. Okay. And we do have meetings there for the general public. All these cabins that you're seeing are dining facilities, sleeping facilities. These cabins are made out of American chestnut. They were put in and built by the CCC, same time they built the fire tower. And these cabins are in use today. We can sleep about 50 to 60 there. We can have a dining hall that's that big and can handle that many. We have classrooms, all that kind of thing. It's a great place for our students to come and get a lot of hands-on experience and courses as part of their forestry undergraduate degree program. A lot of graduate students will do research here and stay overnight and have facilities there to be able to stay at the forest while they're doing research. Well, the general public will come in for some activities we have there. I put another picture of the fire tower in there. That's a picture of what it looks like today. Still there, still standing, and doing a great job for us. And research. So that's our third mission area, if you will. And we do over the years a host of different types of research at Robinson Forest. You see a little list there: hydrology and ecology, aquatic biology, a lot of wildlife research done there, silviculture, archaeology, invasive species management, and more as well. Okay, and I highlighted forest hydrology and silviculture, although I could talk, spend some time talking about all these different areas. But I highlighted those because I wanted to give you some example and use those two areas to give you some example of the type of research that we do at Robinson Forest that has direct impact to woodland ownership and management and forest management here in Kentucky. So first, let's talk about forest hydrology. In 1972, we put hydrologic monitoring stations in several places on the forest that we've been monitoring ever since then. And we have just had our 50th year of data collection from those, and that data collection of itself, that continuous monitoring of we have obviously we're monitoring the water quality and quantity as it's coming out, but we also have weather stations where we collect precip and all that precipitation, rainfall, snowfall as it falls on the forest. So we know what the inputs are, the chemistry of the rainfall, all that kind of thing, and the chemistry and the output as it comes out. So we have a great lab here that we can monitor what's going on atmospherically at the forest. And then we do active work like you're seeing here, where we put studies in to look at the impact of timber harvesting, for example, on water quality, how to protect water quality while timber harvesting. And this was a study, you're seeing kind of an overhead shot here of a study that was put in 1983, and it was the first study that was done looking at the effects of best management practices, or BMPs, things you can do during a logging operation, forestry operations, to protect water quality. And one of the things you can do is leave a little uncut area around the stream. And that's what you're seeing here in the two photos here, is this area that was left around a headwater stream. This particular study was put in where we had 3 watersheds. One we left alone and didn't do anything. One we cut, leaving this streamside management zone in, or this buffer area around the stream, and then a third watershed, a small watershed where we didn't provide any protection at all. And we looked at what happened from a water quality standpoint, and we showed that BMPs did work. These BMPs did work to reduce water pollution. Okay, and that was in 1990 and 1983. Well, this is some pictures of some research that was done recently. You can see in the one overhead photo here, you can see where there was, I've got my cursor, I hope you can see this, but this is the stream, this is the bottom where the stream exits this small watershed, and there was a streamside management zone left around it. Okay, we put this study in to look at different widths of this streamside management zone, different amount of timber that's left there, as well as some other protections for water quality, just to see how, to see if we could determine better ways of protecting water quality while timber harvesting. And this map up here with all these little dots on it, we all the equipment that was timber harvesting equipment that was used on this, we had a GPS antenna on it, data loggers, so we could every 15 seconds when the machinery was on, whether it's bulldozers or log skidders or whatever, or harvesting machinery, we could track where it went, and that was kind of important in the research. We looked at different types of stream crossings, all that kind of thing. And this study was put in 2004. We started taking pre-treatment data. In 2008 and 2009, we did the harvesting, and we continued to study it after that. And of course, we generated the science and the papers from this, looking at different types of protection that could be used in timber harvesting to mitigate, reduce, or potentially eliminate water quality problems. Now, with this work, both the previous study and this one, we were able to, of course, we generated a lot of publications, a lot of science, but most notably what we did is this was used by the Forestry Governor's appointed Forestry BMP board that developed a set of guidelines that are mandatory by law. They're mandatory to be used on timber harvesting operations in Kentucky. So Robinson Forest and research like I described and showed you a little while ago, or in the last slide rather, is put to use directly in helping us protect streams, keep timber harvesting running, and contributing to that $13 billion industry and protecting the environment at the same time. And I'm very proud that Robinson Forest had a critical role in providing that information that went into development of those guidelines. Now, another area that we do a lot of work that's directly germane to forest management, to woodland owners, is silviculture. And we've done a number of different projects at Robinson Forest that we've been able to generate information and science and be able to put that into use across the state. This overhead picture that you're seeing with these different openings in here, this was actually put in as a study to look at harvesting timber, taking volume of timber out across the whole stand, or in these creating these gaps like this. And we were doing that to look at its impacts on threatened and endangered bat species that dwell in the forest in the summer. And we have several of those in Kentucky. We have the Indiana bat. That's an endangered bat that lives in the forest in the summertime, lives in caves in the winter, and dwells in the forest in the summer, that has a range throughout Kentucky. We have a northern long-eared bat that is just recently listed, last several years, listed as threatened. And of course, the Endangered Species Act requires that you protect those species. So what we were doing in this study was seeing if we could set a harvest up and get timber out, extract timber, and actually improve bat habitat in the woods. And we were able to do that and showed that in this research. We also did this. We have also done research here in looking at creating holes of different sizes, not just for bats, but also to be able to promote the regeneration of different species of hardwoods. For example, by adjusting this hole size, we found out that we can create holes that will perpetuate beech and maple, for example, holes that will help us perpetuate oaks, and then holes that will allow us, the size will allow us to grow things very efficiently like yellow poplar and black walnut and those kind of things. So we've done this kind of research that gives us the guidelines that foresters use to do these regeneration kind of harvest throughout Kentucky. So we looked at group openings, adjusting the size to meet different ownership objectives, and harvesting for threatened and endangered bat species, and what we call expanded gap management, which is basically a takeoff on the group openings, allowing you to expand the size of those openings over time. And all that data and information has been published. We use Robinson Forest as a demonstration site for doing continuing education on all these different techniques. You see here in this picture is a bulldozer working. That's actually got a rake on the front of that, where we're doing what we call soil scarification that increase. We found that would increase the number of oak seedlings, on the forest floor, which are needed if you're going to maintain oak in the forest. We've done that kind of work at Robinson Forest. And the tall tree that you see here to the right is a study I put in 1983, looking at crop tree release techniques in white oak. To try to promote good white oak growth and development of good high quality white oak stems. We've done, and that project is still underway. Got a number of years under its belt now, and you can see the kind of high quality timber we're producing. You notice those little metal square things underneath it. We also looked at acorn production from these trees and all that kind of thing. So we do a lot of this kind of research at the forest. So a lot of the crop tree release work that's done in white oak right now is done based on data we've gotten from Robinson Forest in implementing that type of practice and this soil scarification work to increase oak seedlings. So we've done a lot of this kind of work that helps us understand and provide management opportunities, for forest managers and woodland owners throughout the state. These are a couple pictures here of two-age deferment harvest. This is something that we've researched in our department, and we've got a lot of demonstrations of this at Robinson Forest, and we've used Robinson Forest for some of this as well. That's another technique that can be used to regenerate and in some cases keep oak in stands that would normally go away if we didn't harvest it correctly. Those are oak stems and some other species there that are present after harvest to make sure that we got plenty of acorns there for the future for regeneration in future years. So Robinson Forest has been used for a lot of this kind of work. Here you see one final shot here taken by one of our forestry faculty, Dr. John Cox, looking out over Robinson Forest in a misty morning, if you will, and just showing the beauty of this of this facility and of this resource. So that was kind of a quick tour of Robinson Forest, both the past and currently what's going on. Very proud to have that forest for 100 years. Very proud to be doing the research that we're doing there now. And we believe our efforts there and the research that's going on in that facility is something that is a direct benefit to woodland owners throughout the state. So thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit about Robinson Forest.
You know, Billy, Robinson Forest just has so much going on. And, you know, here to talk about a little bit more is John Reinstedel. And, you know, John, we had a couple of questions from the video that I would like for you to answer if you can. And one was, do you use herbicides on Robinson Forest? And can you speak to that practice a little bit, such as TSI? First, you'll have to explain what TSI is, just in case.
That's correct. So there are actually several uses that we would employ herbicides here at Robinson Forest. We do not do a lot of timber stand improvement work, TSI work. This is a working research forest. There are certain areas, as the faculty members and the researchers and the PIs prescribe to do different demonstration areas, that we will actually do some hacking squirt. We will actually do, you know, some applications foliar, work on the areas inside their demonstration areas. We do use some herbicide controlling growth on roadsides around camp. We do treat the parking areas, stuff like that. One of the main uses of herbicide at Robinson Forest is invasive species. So Jeff kind of touched on it in his video. We're not completely surrounded by surface mining, but surface mining touches the forest on you know 65% of the sides, and we get a lot of invasive species interaction coming from those open areas, from the wildlife. Birds, you know, the elk, deer, bear. So we have certain areas along our flyways and our roads. We've got some bush honeysuckle issues, many different issues. And so we've actually had a couple of woodland owner short courses here from the Billy helped us sponsor, that actually we had Dr. Ellen Crocker on site and targeted, you know, flag some of those issues and see the multiflora rose, the bush honeysuckle in the woods, the tree of heaven, and we were able to utilize. But that's some of the stuff that we do work on here. Also, as far as some of our TSI, when we have the spring camp students here, every spring, it used to be a summer camp. So a little FYI, Dr. Stringer was actually here for summer camp, and his picture is in the dining hall in 1978. So that's that, you know, many years later, maybe not so many according to Dr. Stringer, you can become a department chair. So each week.
Yeah.
But we also have our spring camp students now. We moved from a summer camp to a spring camp because so much of what Robinson Forest does as far as teaching forestry at the university on the college level comes back to in woods and, you know, forest practices and learning inventory practices and hands-on herbicides. So when Dr. Stringer's here, you'll meet Chad Nyman later. I assist Chad, and we do a tree to wood product demonstration where they're actually, you know, looking at the total height on a tree, and they grade that out. We fell it, we bring it down. We actually saw it up on the LT70. We don't have the old Corley mill anymore. We have now moved to a LT70 wood miser mill, and we're going to be able to expand on those in future from the woods today opportunities. But the herbicide part of that is we actually, Dr. Stringer teaches the students, and that's part of the timber stand improvement work and crop tree release work that we're teaching, you know, the new foresters each year. But the third third-year students, their spring camp is 8 weeks here at Robinson Forest.
So we did have another question too, is how do they find out more about educational courses that may be offered at the forest or some general public visits for education?
Sure. So I think probably every 2 years or 3 years, I think Billy tries, and you may want to speak to this, Billy, more than me, tries to hold a all-inclusive woodland owner short course. We're also looking at having, through the Robinson Center, the Eastern Research Station, having maybe every other year or every third year, trying to do some type of a public come to the forest and have a learning event. Something we've been talking about as assistant directors. So within the center, but those are things that kind of come up from time to time. So a lot of that is just through your forestry extension and your ag extension people. Those will be more and more. It's always in development, and we're always looking at expanding more of that. Education opportunities, especially with agents and their clients.
Have you ever done a prescribed fire at the forest?
So as a matter of fact, we have. I'm not a fire boss yet. I've got 2 more burns to get underneath my belt, and the weather has not been very cooperative the last couple of years. When you look back at 2016, it was too dry. So we, as part of forestry, as part of fire, is becoming more and more an accepted way of controlling certain invasives, certain trees in stand manipulation. We use prescribed fire on a couple of our properties. So here at the forest, the 10,000 acre research block, we have had a couple of small prescribed burns, and basically was targeting soft maple, trying to kill off the undergrowth to promote white oak regeneration and or oak regeneration in general. Over on the Laurel Fork block, which is also known as the Paul Van Boeven Wildlife Management Area, we have an MOU with Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. We do a spring or a fall burn about each year. Of course, we were planning a fall burn this year, and really, to be honest with you, it is so green still because of the kind of warm fall we've had up to this point, and the growth. It's so green. I don't know that we're going to be able to pull a fall burn off until later, maybe even in December. But we have actually the last 2 years been able to get the forestry students out during their spring class on the spring burns on the Paul Van Boeven over on Starfire, where they're actually doing prescribed burns for elk. And some of that can be viewed too on YouTube, because we did a pretty in-depth Kentucky a field did a session on prescribed burning for elk. So, and I was involved in that, and our group was UK was involved in some of that, along with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. So yeah, and I think that that's expanding. So one of the things that I think you'll see on a prescribed fire, there is a Kentucky prescribed fire group now in the state that regulates a lot of that. We have more opportunities to teach students and for use, and I think it's an important thing for landowners too, depending on their goals for their properties, to have that as a tool.
Well, John, I know we could probably talk about Robinson Forest for every show we do, but and we will definitely have you back on to talk about the different aspects of Robinson Forest, but we definitely wanted to get you on when it's the 100th year anniversary and to celebrate a little bit, and we greatly appreciate you being on with us.
Well, I appreciate the invite, and we'll start working on little tips from the woods to see what we can pass on to some agents and landowners, and help them on their property work, things that we find that work good on roads and in forest, moving material around, lots of everything.
Yeah.
Love it.
You've got
Thank
a lot
you.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So glad to have you caretaker there, John, taking care of things for us, really.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, we've went from the forest. Now
Mhm.
we're going to go to the products. We have Chad Nyman going to come on and talk a little bit about Forest Products Week. So happy Forest Products Week.
Hey, Chad,
Happy Forest Products Week. Hello, Renee and Billy. How are you
Hi.
today?
doing well.
Good.
Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be with you all today and talk about some forest products while we're celebrating National Forest Products Week. And so this is a long tradition here in the US. And so the US Congress, they signed this into law back in 1960. Our natural resources were becoming more and more important. And so they wanted to make sure that there was something every year, the third week in October, that we would recognize the importance of these forests that cover this great country. And they're so important here in Kentucky. We know that they're a huge economic driver in this state. And so they cover nearly half of our land surface across Kentucky. And in some of our eastern counties, it's much more than that. Some counties are as much as 80% forested. And we know this is our largest agriculture sector in Kentucky by quite a bit. It contributes 13.5 billion annually to the Kentucky economy. It also provides the most important ingredient for the $9 billion bourbon industry, which is a significant driver in Kentucky as well. All of that's coming from our forests with that white oak that's in those barrels and all of the many forest products that we have that are made, nearly 5,000 different products that are made from our forests. And so we have nearly 50,000 Kentuckians that are employed right here in Kentucky because of this forest sector. We have a team, Billy Thomas is one of those folks, including Dr. Stringer and a few others that work on this Kentucky Forest Sector Economic Contribution Report. We've got a link down here if you'd like to read more about that. So one big effort we've got going on, tying in with several other states to help build the workforce for this forest industry, is Kentucky Forestry Works. And so there's going to be a high school age curriculum that teachers can use to teach about forests and forestry careers and forest products within the classroom structure. And so you'll hear more about this as that continues to develop. One thing that a lot of folks ask about is, are we running out of forests or are we harvesting too much? And so I always like to show this figure here. It shows the growth and drain in our Kentucky forests. And so this green column here is the growth that we're putting on annually. And the red is the mortality. So that's what's dying from old age, insects, and disease. And then removals is what we're harvesting out of the woods with those loggers out there being able to make forest products. And so we have about as much dying from old age, insects, and disease as what we're taking out. And the big takeaway is that we're growing twice as much as what is dying and being removed. And so when we look at forest products, there's so many of them. And so we look in our buildings, in all of our accents that we have in a space. And so some of these serve different purposes. I've got a picture here in the student center on campus, the Martin Gatton Student Center. I'm sorry, the Gatton Student Center. And this is a social staircase where students can congregate and be able to work on their studies within that student center. This is an image here from the Gatton Business School. And so you can see just how much that the wood will make a much brighter and much more welcoming space for our students. And so it really impacts learning and our human health, but as well as reducing impact on the environment by the sustainability of the materials that we use. And so there is a concept of many small positive choices having a positive impact. I really like this saying of reduce, reuse, recycle. But adding to that, renew. Our forests, they renew themselves here in Kentucky and in the hardwood region. And so we have to make sure that we're looking at forest health and managing those woods and helping them to continue to renew and sustain us by producing great forest products, but so many other benefits that they're providing to us. And so we know forest products, they reduce our daily impact on the environment as well. So we look at packaging and paper products, and you think about, paper or plastic or polystyrene, so styrofoam. And so the packaging that you get when you go and you purchase something from the store, it helps you protect the goods, from any kind of damage, as well as providing sanitation for that product. And so it's important that you have something that's renewable and biodegradable. And so there are sustainability labels that help to inform consumers of the contents of the packaging. And so if you're not sure if something's made out of paper or forest products, some of these labels like FSC or the USDA certified bio-based product or Sustainable Forestry Initiative logos and labels can help to determine, sustainable supply chains for products. One important thing I like to point out: in Kentucky, paper is made from chipping of low-grade trees through forest management activities, as well as residues from lumber production. So paper that's made here is very sustainably sourced. So I'm actually here at the Wood Utilization Center today. Dr. Stringer and John Reinstedel talked about the Robinson Forest, and this is part of that grouping of that land that was acquired through the E.O. Robinson Lumber Company. So on the Robinson Center, just about 40 minutes down the road from Robinson Forest, we have this 14,000 square foot mass timber glue-lam beam supported wood laboratory. And so inside of this structure, we're able to put on different trainings for industry, as well as community groups like family consumer science groups will come up for different workshops. But this is a wood manufacturing laboratory and innovation training center. We do have classroom and meeting space here on site. And so we're able to provide wood industry and community forest training here. So here's a picture far panned out showing that surrounding landscape that's been revegetated by those hardwood trees growing back on the landscape. And we've got some images here from some of the staves from a study that we conducted over the last few years with our cooperage industry, trying to help recover more of that white oak wood that help it go into barrels instead of being lost through that drying process. And so we've got a technical training series with different trainings for folks in wood industry, but our forestry students actually come through as part of that spring field semester to learn a little bit more about utilizing that wood that is growing out in the forests and how to make efficient products and learn about supply chain on that side of things. And so this is structured very similarly to Robinson Forest, with the extension, research, and teaching missions. So with forest management and wood, we know that wood is our oldest and most sustainable building material when it is paired with sustainable forest management. That's a critical point, that we're sustainably managing that forest and looking at forest health and the future productivity of those native forests. One exciting thing, there's so much new technology and innovation nowadays that is helping to make the wood industry more efficient and such precision that products can be manufactured with nowadays. And this actually goes into mass timber building components as well. So helping to redefine and improve the health and sustainability of the buildings and structures that we're building to live, work, learn, and recreate in. And so mass timber, it's a category of wood product. And we know that it has this ability to revolutionize how America is building structures. So these are comprised of multiple solid wood panels, either nailed or glued together. And these panels provide exceptional strength and stability. I've got an image here that shows the direction of the layers. And you can see this is quite a thick panel that could serve as a wall, ceiling, or floor panel. And so with hardwood CLT, that is one form of mass timber using these dimensional lumber in these orthogonal layers. And so if you want to learn more about that, there's a link to Think Wood, and they have a great explanation of mass timber and supplemental resources. There is a Woodworks group that has a lot of information about mass timber as well. And so why hardwood CLT? So when you look at Kentucky's forest composition, we are heavy to the oak, hickory, and hardwood species. And so if we look at the softwood species, we're, about 5% or less of our forest composition is in softwoods, which are typically used as structural lumber. And so by being able to utilize hardwood in structural lumber, we can allow ourselves to use more wood from Kentucky's forests to help achieve management and allow for succession in a planned way to help that forest as it grows the next generation of trees. All those trees in the understory have to be released, and nature will do that on its own. It just takes a much longer time frame. And so the benefits of mass timber, we know that it will allow us to increase forest management in that landscape out there in the woods, being able to achieve the objectives of the private landowner. This also provides a new market for those landowners so they can sell their trees into those markets and be able to achieve those management objectives that they have. And there is a great benefit to carbon storage through long-lived wood products. We know that there are biophilic properties of wood, and so the way it smells, the way it feels, the way you feel when you're in a room that is real wood used in it is a very real thing. And so biophilic properties are how we can explain that innate nature that we are connected to with those natural materials. And wood is a naturally a insulative material. It has insulative properties. And so it helps to reduce the heating and cooling expenses and energy required to be able to keep those spaces at a temperature maintained. So many benefits from using mass timber. There is also another benefit as our construction industry continues to move to more and more prefabrication offsite to reduce the construction timeline and enormous cost savings to try to reduce the expense of construction. And so while at a mill, the CLT panels can be cut to size, and any door or window openings, any of those things for the utilities, the plumbing, the electric can all be CNC'd into that panel using technology that is very state of the art. And all of these cuts are able to be made with very high precision. And so then once the panels are delivered on a truck, they can be erected, put together using a crane that will lift the panels into place. And so when we look at our construction globally, we know that the construction accounts for 37% of global CO2 emissions back in 2021. And so concrete and steel are very important building materials and always will be. But being able to use those materials in the most efficient way in the best location and being able to offset some of the impact to the environment by using more wood and utilizing that concrete and steel in the most specific locations and the foundations and the connections. And so there's great benefit in CO2 storage by using that wood, as well as offsetting use of concrete and steel throughout the structure. And we know that there is this benefit with mass timber and the capacity to capture and store carbon. And so we have a variety of different mass timber products, cross laminated timber, nail laminated timber, dowel laminated timbers, as well as glue laminated timbers. All you can see a variety of different ways that these products are put together using either glue, nail, or dowels. Here is just one example of a hybrid mass timber structure, which is the Brock Commons Tall Wood House. So with all of this excitement with Forest Products Week going on, we celebrated on campus. And so October 15th through 21st is the Forest Products Week in 2023. It's always the third week in October. And this is also proclaimed by Kentucky's governor. And so we can see many notes here about Kentucky's 12.4 million acres of forest that cover nearly half our state and employ nearly 50,000 people with a contribution of $13.5 billion. And these renewable products that store and sequester carbon from our atmosphere, so many benefits. It's important to remember that this is a bipartisan supported effort and many long years of folks supporting this on both sides of the political aisle, because healthy, productive forests are not a political topic. And so with that, I'd like to say happy Forest Products Week to everyone, and celebrate forest products and forests every day. And remember the importance of the materials that we use. That's all I've got for today.
Well, thank you, Chad. We appreciate that. We did have one question from someone that said that you had a slide on the removal and disease. And once she was wondering kind of like what was the canopy, let's see, what was the number of trees if the canopy had diseased trees and removal was much larger. And I don't know if it's probably at the beginning. Okay,
So
she would,
here, yes.
yeah, she was kind of questioning like what was the number of trees and if the canopy were diseased trees and that kind of thing.
Right. So this is statewide. So you got to look at the whole Kentucky landscape, and you have to look, this is in volume. And so this isn't counting just trees. If we go into the forest inventory analysis information that our U.S. Forest Service maintains, and they've got a great database full of a wealth of information. And so we can go into there and we could find out how many trees died. So, when emerald ash borer came through, we lost billions of trees.
Mhm.
And so you look at, so mortality accounts for that volume in board feet that was lost at this time due to mortality. So old age and insects and disease all, held together all in one grouping. And then the removals is what was harvested and turned into wood products.
She
And the
asked how, oh, sorry. She
No,
asked
you're
how
fine.
does volume vary from canopy or are they the same?
Oh, so it would vary greatly. And so that's a very important question about forest composition. And so going back to the emerald ash borer, there are some counties in northern Kentucky where the forest composition was 60 to 70% ash. And so when you think about that large of a forest composition and that one species of ash and the emerald ash borer coming through, those areas were much more affected by the emerald ash borer and the loss of the ash tree compared to other parts of the state, like say in the eastern portion, that have much less ash in their forest composition. We have such great diversity in our forests with 120 native species, but some areas have more composition in some species than others. So it's highly variable on the landscape level.
But we
Yes.
appreciate you answering that and clarifying that. Oh, she said, what is the canopy change on that slide?
Right. So actually, we're growing more than what we're losing. So there's a net gain, if you will, when you're looking at the canopy change. It's a positive gain. We're growing more than what we're losing. But we have to also take into account when we look at forest health and many of the great things that Dr. Crocker has been talking about. We've got some areas of the state, especially the central part, where we have bush honeysuckle and all these invasive shrubs that come in. And so we lost the ash trees and what was below them, the bush honeysuckle. And so that replaced other native species of hardwood trees that would have come in. And so some parts of the state we're having, some loss due to replacement with these non-native invasive shrubs. And then other parts of the state, where there isn't as much invasion from non-native invasive species, then you're having native trees that are coming back in those places.
All right. Thank you, Chad. We appreciate that Forest Products Week, and we can celebrate that, every day, but we'll definitely have that back again next year to focus on again next year. So we greatly appreciate you being on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you. All right. We appreciate you all as to joining us every week. If it wasn't for you all, we wouldn't have a show. And so we appreciate you joining us every week at FromTheWoodsToday.com. We have all of our shows. So if you want to go back and watch any of them, you can. You can ask questions. We have a survey on there. You can suggest show ideas, a little bit of everything on there. And I think we have like over 100 shows, I know for sure, on FromTheWoodsToday.com. So we greatly appreciate you joining us each week. And until then, we will see you next week at 11 o'clock. Take care. Bye.
From the woods today.